returns, by the way.
Magansho like file and returns.
Atrere. Mo file returns shanyusha KRA.
Is a file returns? Body. Deadline chiegni.
Najue. No file returns yaku.
Wachere kwa file returns chao.
Mara wa file returns.
Ndirenda didikane ku file ni wotikagia penalty. Ogwo file umonde.
Munateseka kulipa ushuru kwa nini? Step out of the line and into convenience with the pay bill 22222.
Ebu tusaidiane ndo tufanye hii haraka. This is very convenient.
Tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee.
Hello? Is this KRA? Now, I've been trying to pay my custom duty tax, but the process itself is physically taxing. The cumbersomeness is causing a hindrance to my all-paid expensive trip. I am vexed, I am upset, and I am exasperated by the sheer inconvenience of this payment process. Now, can you help me? What do you mean this is a wrong number? Do you know who I am? I am a certified jet setter Alejandro Chieng, so you better help. Hello? Hello?
Paying custom tax shouldn't be such a hassle. Hello, Mr. O'Chain. You can pay customs duty tax at the airport, all on your smartphone. No more slowing down your jet-setting lifestyle. The customs officer will generate an online payment slip. Use the pay bill 22222. Account number is on the payment slip generated. Enter the amount, and voila, tax is paid quick and easy.
You mean it is this simple?
Yes, it is. You can now catch your flight faster by paying customs duty seamlessly using the pay bill number 22222. Waste no time.
Yes, because time flies and so should you and I.
Kenya Revenue Authority, making your travel smoother, one tap at a time.
Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible and clear enough. It's 9 o'clock on the hour, and I would like us to start this forum. I can confirm that our speakers are already on the call. I can also confirm that we have the numbers or good quorum to have this forum. And I'd like to invite my colleague, Seituna, to start us off with a word of prayer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Seituna.
I hope you're all well.
Yes.
Let's start with the prayer. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the especially merciful. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Seituna, for your opening prayers. I would like to invite us to listen to the Kenya National Anthem and thereafter the East African National Anthem. Thank you very much, Secretariat, for that facilitation. Once again, a very warm welcome to the third edition of the Women in Taxation Forum, convened by the Kenya Revenue Authority. I'm excited, I'm happy and humbled to be moderating this session. My name is Sheila Duvaga. I work with the Kenya Revenue Authority in the International Relations and Diplomacy Office. I warmly welcome you, all of you. I see that we have around 273 participants already in the call. Looking forward to a very interactive and engaging session with all of us. For this juncture, I wish to recognize the attendance of our panel speaker, Mrs. Mary Bain. She is the panel speaker for the forum today. We also have in the audience, Madam Agnes Gadhaia. She's the country director at Google Kenya. Thank you very much for being here. And we also have our very own Madam Esther Wahome, Deputy Commissioner, Policy and Tax Advisory, Kenya Revenue Authority. Thank you for gracing us with your time and your presence and to be with us. We are looking forward to listening to you and to receiving insights on your various areas of your discussions. Today's theme of the forum is Tech Blazers, Women Driving Digital Transformation in Taxation. For the longest time, women have been perceived to be left out in tax matters. So today we are honored to listen to how this segment of taxpayers who play a very critical part in tax payment, nation building, can be, enhanced, included more, listen more, their views can be heard more, and how they can participate even better in terms of tax administration and matters tax. As you're aware, the digital transformation has enhanced businesses globally, and Africa has not been left behind in matters of tax, digital transformation, enhancing taxes, making the tax payment process painless and easy for our taxpayers to pay their taxes. To start us off is the keynote address. But before we do that, I would like to invite our Deputy Commissioner in charge of Corporate Support Services, Madam Nancy Ngetich, to officially welcome all of us to this forum and officially open this meeting. Commissioner Nancy, if you can unmute. Commissioner, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. We can see you, Commissioner. Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear you. We can see you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think I lost you at some point. Maybe you come on once more.
Oh, sorry about that. We want to welcome you to officially welcome this forum for us. If you can kindly give us your welcoming remarks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you once again, Sheila. And thank you to the team that we have today, led by Mary Bain and Agnes Gadhaia with our DC policy and tax advisory. So I'll give the opening remarks on behalf of KRA, and I take this opportunity to welcome you to the third edition of the Women in Taxation. This year's theme, Tech Trailblazers, Women Driving Digital Transformation in Taxation, will explore the implications, the challenges and opportunities for women in digitalization of tax administration in the modern age. Like other African tax administration, KRA is keen to safeguard and enhance its tax base by not only collecting revenue from the digital economy, but also taking advantage of new technologies to strengthen taxpayer experience, thereby making tax compliance easy, simple, and efficient. Women driving digital transformation in taxation is to be looked at in two perspectives. One is the role of the woman who is involved in the various economic activities, which in turn its achievements such as economic growth, poverty reduction, better health care, education, and welfare. In these engagements, these women, just like their male counterparts, uses technology as their systems, their tools, and solutions to facilitate their businesses, including trading in digital space too. This is a critical perspective in digital transformation in taxation, as it is an enabler to the digital transformation in tax administrations, where both the business society is progressively becoming digitally transformed. Ladies and gentlemen, we've witnessed an elevation of women to strategic leadership roles in the tech space. This including the emergence of numerous women-led, digitally enabled organizations and startups. The other perspective, of course, is the women in the tax administrations themselves who are driving the digital transformation in collection of taxes, who then respond to the business society by ensuring agile technology that is seamless, frictionless, and efficient in payment of taxes. The overall growth of the digital economy has raised concerns on the ability and preparedness of tax regimes to respond to the heightened pace. Nonetheless, the integration of digital technology into business processes has fundamentally changed operating models to a large extent. This, however, requires an agile, resilient, and innovative tax administration that can efficiently respond to the taxpayer needs and effectively draw revenue from an electronic and information-driven economy. Bringing it home, I believe that as a tax administration, there is still more room to fully explore the potential afforded by digital technology. Advanced digital transformation in taxation must provide an efficient and transparent processes to ensure that women, as key drivers and significant contributors to economic development, are actively involved in and benefits from the same. While embracing digitization, it is crucial to acknowledge risks that women might face, from errors in digital systems, misuse of personal data, bribery, the unfortunate possibility of cyber threats, and strategies to safeguard women who may be more vulnerable to these challenges. By doing so, we aim to create an exclusive and secure environment where women can actively participate in the digital transformation of taxation. As we recognize and celebrate these digital advancements, we remain alive to the reality that the benefits of the digital age are yet to be drawn equally. Women, especially those in marginalized communities, are yet to fully benefit from the digital boon. As such, tax agencies must consider other fit-for-purpose administration processes that empower women in such communities to participate in economic activities and nation building. Ladies and gentlemen, the continuous disruption caused by digital transformation does not occur in a vacuum. It demands that we remain innovative, and evolve to be able to draw its maximum benefits. We must therefore be open to diversify our administrative processes, embrace culture change, and continually challenge the status quo, experiment and be able to rise up again, should we not get it right the first time. This sometimes means walking away from long-standing processes in favor of relatively new practices that are still being defined. Further, there is need for tax policies that drive macroeconomic stability, necessary for job creation and higher women's participation in the labor market. This can only be achieved through collaboration with policymakers from both public and private sectors to ensure that such strategic milestones are realized. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will hear from women in leadership who are successfully accepting, embracing, and adapting to the rapid change caused by digital transformation. I believe that we will learn from their experiences, their successes, their lessons, the challenges and opportunities in this modern age. Today's forum is not just about dialogue, it's about forging a path towards a more equitable and inclusive future. My expectation is that from this forum, we will be able to pick actionable way forward that can help us to collectively drive digital transformation in taxation. Thank you all, and I wish you a successful engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner, for your welcoming remarks. Indeed, today's conversation should give us or lead us to forging a path towards equitable and inclusive pathway. So we thank you very much for those remarks. At this juncture, I want to recognize the attendance or the presence of Commissioner Dr. Lilian Nyawanda. I also wish to recognize KRA leadership in the call, deputy commissioners present, chief managers present, KRA managers present, KRA staff at large. I also wish to recognize the attendance of ETAF, Women Network Forum, present in the call. I also wish to recognize the attendance of ISPAC members. Thank you very much for joining us today. I also wish to recognize the attendance and participation of AWAC, Association of Women Accountants of Kenya. Thank you very much for being amidst ourselves. We really, truly appreciate your presence. At this juncture, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Madam Mary Bain. She is the Director, Tax Programs at the Africa Tax Administration Forum, abbreviated as ATAF. She is an African intergovernmental organization leading tax administration forum that facilitates peer support among tax administration in mobilizing greater domestic resources through improvised efficiency and effectiveness in their operations. Her work includes the supervision of multiple technical assistance engagement that include but not limited to VAT as a flagship tax, and multiple country programs featuring tax transfer pricing and exchange of information intervention in ETAF's technical assistance program. Prior to this assignment, Ms. Bain was served as the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of the Republic of Rwanda, and as Commissioner General of the Rwanda Revenue Authority, having grown through the ranks of the different departments over a period of 17 years. It is an honor, Madam Mary, to be here. We cannot wait to listen to your insights as you share with us. Feel much welcome and take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I confirm you are audible, loud and clear.
Thank you so much. I want to start by thanking KRA for inviting me to speak at this event. And I also want to thank the Commissioner Ngetich for the very kind words of welcome. And I want to say that it is always an honor to engage with KRA and other tax administrations, because then and only then can ATAF know the areas where our support will be relevant. So thank you so much. I had shared my presentation, but as they put it up, I want to say a few things. So if Elizabeth can kindly put it up. Thank you. As you put it up, I wanted to say a few things. One, I think we must have shared with you an old bio. So I just wanted to say that my designation is the Deputy Executive Secretary at the African Tax Administration. And the rest really remains as is, although I also want to say that as a woman, it is always a pleasure to participate in such discussions, because it enables one to realize that while one has been in the tax administration business for a while, we don't intentionally think of the different contributions, from the different sectors. And it is always a reminder when I join these women in tax events that this is an area where we have to focus. So when I saw the invitation, I was really excited that we're going to speak specifically about digitization, because it is indeed a dream for every tax practitioner, and I'm sure also for the taxpayers, because on one hand, it makes tax payment easy and that reduces compliance costs for the taxpayers, but it also enables us to tax everybody as we should. Thank you. I was just trying to fill in before so that my presentation comes on. Thank you. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So the way I've structured my presentation is that I will give a bit of a background, because taxation has always been considered as a complex area. But it is even made more complex because, especially in Africa, of the large part of the informal sector. And the technological solutions that are available, while changing the whole landscape, are not really as accessible to women as they should be. So part of my background will really, touch on this, and I will share some stats. I will share some evidence to show that there are still gaps, tax and gender gaps, and these impact digitization and the benefits that the women can get from this. I will also talk about the issue of that these women experience in terms, in comparison to their male counterparts. But I'll also talk about some of the solutions that ATAF has thought of. And I want, I heard you, Sheila, say that there's the attendance of the ATAF Women in Tax colleagues. And this has really changed the landscape, especially for the way women, are dealing, especially women in the tax arena. And I'll talk about some of the things that ATAF is doing. So I hope that by the end of this, after sharing the initiatives and some of the products, like the African Tax Outlook, we will be able to see real evidence of how this is working. And then finally, I will show areas of where I consider that there could be some improvement to enable women even deliver better under the benefits of digitization. If we can move to the next slide, please. All right, so by way of background, I wanted to first set the scene and talk about the role of women. So if you look at some of the stats that we have, especially from the African Tax Outlook, it is clear that 40 to 60%, the informal sector is about 40 to 60% in Africa. 80% of this is women, and 24%, they contribute to 24% of the GDP, and of this, only 7% is the contribution to total tax revenue. So why is this happening? If the women are at that level, it means if they were able to get to work under a digitized environment, I'm sure there'd be less, informality, and of course the benefits would be obvious. The second thing I want to talk about is the digitization on the continent. So if you look at the digital infrastructure and connectivity across Africa, again, studies show that 50% of the population have access. 88% of the continent have mobile cellular coverage. On the rural and remote regions, this continues to grapple with challenges. And as we know, the majority of these are women. So now let's look at the women under this environment. 3 billion people remain unconnected, but the majority of these are women and girls, according to the different studies available. So again, I want to talk about the gender gap. Women in Africa are 37%, it is said, likely than men to use the mobile internet. Just before the webinar started, there was an advert from KRA at the airport, at the customs area, and they were talking about using mobile phones and using M-Pesa to pay your duties, your customs duties. So this is already really a major boost in terms of the taxpayers reducing compliance costs. So if the women are not that connected, it shows that there's still a huge room for improvement. So yes, for women to be trailblazers, that gap will have to be reduced. And again, in terms of motivation, studies indicate that greater digital access for women can boost African economies at least by 10% in 2025. So indeed, there is room for women to become real trailblazers and to be able to participate at a level of their male counterparts. If we can move to the next slide, please. Now, I wanted to share these stats from our ATO, and I wanted to show the role of digitization in tax administrations. And if you look at that information, African RAs have digitized processes, and they've really invested in this. And I liked what the Commissioner Ngetich said earlier, because there's increased number of women in leadership. You see that these will be able then to provide policies and to fight for policies in this regard. And so hopefully it will be, also reflect on the women. So if you look at the general digitization of tax authorities, they are doing well. But what I want to say, you look at e-registration at 73%, e-filing at 94%, e-payment at 97%, which is brilliant. But my point here is, remember, this is the formal, people who are paying taxes who are registered. So if we're saying that women are largely in the informal sector, it means that a big number of this doesn't reflect the contribution of women. So meaning that because the informal sector is not taxed, the information is not captured. So part of that really needs to be solved, because it affects both the tax base, but it also affects their capacity to engage in economic building. Next, please. Thank you so much. So what are the, this slide again shows some opportunities. So the possible opportunities is to access flexible and remote opportunities through digital tax platforms. This is just like they are available to men. What are the intentional efforts that different governments are making to do this? Is it possible, for instance, for governments to invest in tax education, specifically targeting women? Because these are in the informal sector, is it possible? I recall a study that was done in one of the Southern African countries. And in this study, they had requested ATAF to try and gauge the magnitude of the informal sector. And at the end of the informal sector, we found that the people who were considered to be in the informal sector, 27% were actually not even micro or small taxpayers, but they were medium taxpayers. And so that is the level at which this informality can deny the tax base and of course the necessary revenue that is considered by government. So the second opportunity is avenues for innovation and entrepreneurship. It means the more they are formalized, the more they can access loans, they can access other financial support, which would boost the women's development. Again, the friendly tax solutions would reduce compliance costs and reduce informality. Increased compliance ratios for studies show that women are more compliant than men. There was a study by the ICTD on Uganda, and the study showed that women were likely to be more compliant than their male counterparts. So meaning that if this informality that I just described is able to become formal, that would be a boost for both the women in terms of the economics, but also for tax administration to try and governments to collect more revenue. I talked about financial empowerment. So if we can go back to the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So what are the challenges? I talked about limited access to this infrastructure. So are the women, is there a national policy to try and empower these women? What can be done? What can we propagate? Because as tax administrations, the role of a tax administration is both to collect revenue, but it is also to provide policy advice. So what kind of advice are we propagating? What kind of partnerships are we forging? I'm happy to see that there's a sister from the private sector here who will also tell us some of the solutions that could possibly alleviate this. So what are some of the decisions? How can that access be, boosted? Awareness and confidence. In the opening remarks of the Commissioner Ngetich, she did mention the fact that, there's an increased awareness. Yes, it is increased, but it is not at the level at which it should be because of the stats that I showed you. So what can be done? Can we structure our tax education? Can we structure our civic education to target this sector of society that is able to contribute, especially and facilitated by digitization? So how can that be done? I will be sharing a case study later on so that we can see where some of the tax administrations have done this, and there've been a lot, there's remarkable return on investments. So some of the gender biases and stereotypes I talked about earlier, but where women think, it is generally believed that women I don't want to say less tech savvy, but they are risk averse, and so sometimes may not go for these solutions. But we have seen that is continuously reducing because everybody, including my very, very aged mother, now uses mobile money. So I think all that can be really addressed through targeted education and many other initiatives. Next, please. So what are some of the challenges to these policy decisions and taking this? I wanted to give you again some examples from some of the work that we have done and to show the tax and gender gaps and the impact on digitalization. One is limited data. There is an issue of limited data because even the stats that I was giving you in the ATO, they show that digitization of tax administrations, it is only now because there've been specifically initiatives from the ATAF Women in Tax Network to request for this. It is only now that we're going to start collecting the data that shows the gender differences. So there is a need for data because you cannot plan, you cannot develop policy without having data. So information is power. So to be able to make informed decisions, there's need for data, but there's also need for evidence. Again, the information that is available is largely on the tax practitioners. If you heard Commissioner Ngetich very carefully, she said that the discussion is really two-sided. It's about the tax payer or the person in the economy, the business person. So, but there's limited taxpayer information to date. The information that we have is the information on the tax practitioners, on the tax men and women. So there is need to do that. Two, executive gender data. Again here, we usually have the data that stops right at the top leadership. But there are very key roles, for instance, that women play in the middle sector. For instance, people who are dealing with transfer pricing, people who are dealing with tax policy development, people who are doing research and innovation. What is the ratio there? There's need for that data because those are the key influencers. So there's limited micro-simulation model programs. So to document the comparative gender impact is also limited. But I'm glad that the ATAF Women in Tax Network and other players in the field are now working on all this to make sure that we have information that will then guide in terms of policy formulation, but also in terms of operational improvement. So in terms of the gender impact analysis of tax policies and tax administration, there's lack of the distributional impact on women's tax burden analysis. So that, there are a couple of studies that have been going on, including some of the studies that have been done by the ATAF Women in Tax. And we hope that as we go along, that all the gap created by the absence of this data and the evidence that can then help us to make an informed decision and drive a campaign for this can be addressed from the ATO, and it shows that there are largely more male employees, even within the tax administrations, if we look at this. So I talked about the gap, the challenge of not having the information on the women involved in the private sector. Now I'm talking about the tax systems themselves, where still the male to female ratio is still low. So if you look at the ideal situation is where the ratio is 1:1, but I think you can see that it's very limited to just a few countries. Everybody else, you can see that the males are based definitely more. They are 2 times more working in ATO tax administrations, which are about 39 countries now. You can see that there's still the male are still more. So what are we doing intentionally to ensure that there are more females? So more efforts are required here. Next, please. Next, please, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. I'm moving very fast. Again, starts from the ATO to show you some information regarding women participating in decision making. There are still few as compared to more than to their counterparts. More than 74% of executive positions according to the ATO are occupied by males. There are only 7 commissioners general on the continent who are women out of the the 43 ATAF members. So there's the more women there are in leadership, the more we will be able to drive this kind of policy. So what we need to do is, for instance, to drive this and make sure once we have that data, we are able to do the advocacy, because that is part maybe of what needs to be done. And of course, where you find that there are people in the legislature, there are women in the legislature. I'll give an example of Rwanda. You find that some of these women women support decisions or women support laws are really given prominence because they're able to articulate the gaps that would otherwise not be articulated. So I'll give an example right there of Seychelles, where the former Commissioner General introduced in their tax register and the tax return in 2023 to capture the gender statistics. You find that the other tax administrations, there are very few tax administrations who do that. So it would be interesting if we could capture that and be able to use it in policy making. So that is information on the women in tax. That is the work that they are trying to do. The women in tax is bringing visibility to what women can do in tax if given opportunity, both at policy level and also at professional level, at administrative level. Next, please. Next, please. So those are part of the ATAF solutions that I was talking about. So the ATAF Women in Tax Network is really pushing this so that we can be able to get solutions for women and promote women in tax for the reasons that I said. Next, please. Elizabeth, if you can move my slides a little faster. All right. So that is some of the information from that will be now that we'll be able to get from the African Tax Outlook, which is an annual publication by ATAF that specifically gives details on gender by taxpayers gender to show taxpayer income disparity, taxpayer occupation, taxpayer compliance, and some of the tax incentives. Are there incentives for women, for instance, to get more digitized? Are there incentives for, the other areas? So on tax refunds, again, how does this affect women, compliance costs, and, any other information that can help in policy making? Next, please. Next, please, Elizabeth. Thank you. So there is a study, and this is in the public domain, that shows where Rwanda actually got some information that shows the different genders and how, they are participating in tax. And so I would encourage everybody to look at it because it shows, the disparity that I was talking about earlier and how it's being addressed. Again, that's the same study. It's in the public domain. Everybody can access it. Next, please. Next, please. Elizabeth, if you can hear me, if you can go to the next slide. Yes, again, individual business ownership by gender in Rwanda. All that is in the public domain. You can look at it to see. I just put it there to, again, that shows by tax type. Next, please. Next, please, Elizabeth. Again, all this is in the case study that I was talking about, and then revenue by importers. So all this, shows that it is possible to get this data, which then helps in terms of formulating policy. Next, please. Next, please. All right. So what are the the challenges? I had already talked about some of these, and one of the solutions that ATAF is looking at is the IT tax system for Africa, and it will be, of course, looking at some of the solutions that can help the taxpayers who are really disadvantaged presently and are not really also on the tax register. So hopefully this can cover and address some of the issues. So I just wanted to give this as an example and a possibility, one of the tools, one of the areas that ATAF is doing. But this is what I wanted to conclude with. So in terms of what the digitization of tax administrations and how this is going to help, one, build the tax base, but also enable women reduce their costs and get into the, a space where they can access funds and all. Is it possible to have targeted training? Maybe we can discuss this later. Can the mentorship and networking between, say, the tax practitioners help? Because again, this is a program that is run by the ATAF Women in Tax Network. Can we use those scenarios to help women get elevated into even more leadership positions so that we can improve in terms of policy decisions and in terms of administration, gender data-driven decisions? I really will belabor, I talked about this a lot. Can this be improved? How can we do it? Can we introduce it in the different tax administrations, like the example I gave in the case study? I talked about the need to have gender IT sensitive designs and policy advocacy, and then the role of outreach and awareness. So as I conclude, I want to say that the digital economy is here. It is already a world where we consider tax complex, but the digital economy is even more complex, but it also has its own possibilities. So what are we going to do as women in tax to try and ensure that this is, that this is addressed? I thank you, and I'll be happy to engage further in the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Baine, for your insights, statistics around data, gender, inclusivity of women in tax decisions, policy matters that needs to be addressed, and even sharing practical examples. For instance, administrations that have already incorporated some of these decisions, including Seychelles, sharing the case study from Rwanda, a lot that we can learn as a revenue authority. We truly appreciate those insights that you have shared with us. I would like to invite our next speaker, and possibly she will be picking from what you have delivered, and also just addressing what fintech and what opportunities we have as an economy, as Africa, in as far as digital transformation is concerned and matters tax administration. Our next speaker is Miss Agnes Gadhaya. She is the Google Director with the responsibility for East Africa. Before she joined Google, she was the Chief Executive Officer of Integrated Payment Services Limited, popularly known as PesaLink. PesaLink is a real-time payment suite connecting 22 banks and enabling customers to make instant payments anytime and anywhere, and from anywhere, affordably and securely. Agnes has more than 23 years progressive experience in organization transformation, predominantly developing strategy and providing commercial leadership in sales and business development. Sorry about that. She has held leadership positions in organizations including Deloitte Consulting, System Application Products, and recently Safaricom, and has had an opportunity to work across Africa. She also sits in boards, including One Acre Fund, United Way Kenya, Africa Women in FinTech and Payments, and the Payment Association of Africa. Agnes holds a master's in business administration from the United States International University and a Bachelor of Science in Economics from Bryn Mawr College in the United States. She also has been through the Harvard University Women in Leadership program and was recognized in 2010 by the Business Daily as one of the top 40 under 40 women in the country, and has since received many other awards and accolades. Madam Agnes, what more can we say? We invite you to share with you your insights on the opportunities in digital transformation to help revenue authorities enhance their tax administration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and everybody on the call. I listened to Commissioner Ngetich and her introduction. I also listened to Madam Mary, and indeed, at Google, a lot of the same numbers, the same challenges that are coming through in the tax space are exactly the same ones that are across quite a number of industries across Africa. So at Google, we have an overall mission to make information accessible to everybody, everywhere. That has been our mission since we were founded 25 years ago. And that has not changed. The how changes once in a while, but that has not changed. Now, everywhere and everybody includes Africa, and it also includes Africans. And so in sub-Saharan Africa at Google, we spend our mission right now is focused extremely around access. When we talk about access, we're talking about creating connectivity and investing in infrastructure that connects, that ensures that everybody across Africa has access to the internet. And then the second thing is around how do we ensure that every single person in Africa has access to a smartphone or a smart device. The computing device choice in Africa is a mobile phone. In a lot of other jurisdictions, it's a laptop, the iPad, PCs, etc. But we went straight to the mobile phone. And there are lots of different advantages with the path that we took. You've seen in the statistics that were shared, 37% of women are less likely than men to use the mobile internet. I think everybody on this call, and I'm seeing the numbers, 718 people. That's like a lot of people. But everybody on this call has actually benefited from being able to access the information, the internet. Imagine the transformational nature of first getting on the internet. If I think about, for example, my grandmother, who was a farmer, if she had access to the internet, how transformed her life would have been, from access to markets to knowing where she can get the best quality seed, from finding out what is the best way and process of actually planting. When do you weed? What do you put when? etc. Imagine how transformed her life would have been, right? And that is the power that we want to put in every single African's hands. Now, when we come to women, unfortunately, we have a lagging number, just like all the other numbers in all the other industries. The number of women who actually have access to smartphones and are able to use them to grow their businesses and be able to create great value for them and their families is diminished. That statistic in Kenya is actually 39%. And so 39% are less likely than men to use the mobile internet. And the biggest challenge that they talk about is cost. So at Google, Google owns the Android platform, which is 99% of most phones in Africa. At Google, what we spend a lot of time doing is working with all the different manufacturers of phones to try and significantly bring down the cost of a mobile phone. And we've been doing that for a number of years. And we've managed to bring down the cost of a basic smartphone from $100. I think now we are at the about $60 point, where we marry two things. We marry functionality, so it has to work well. I think many of you remember the 1 GB phones that just, you open one app and everything else kind of collapses. So at least a 2 GB capacity phone that's affordable and most importantly, secure. So we spend a lot of time with different manufacturers of phones, phones that you're aware of, whether it's Oppo, Transio, Infinix, Tecno, Samsung, to see if we can drive down that cost. But even if we bring down the cost of a phone to about 6,000 shillings where it is right now, the question is how many people can actually afford to save up 6,000 shillings and walk into a shop and buy a phone? Based on the earnings pyramids that I have seen in several research places, most earners, formal and informal, can actually not be able to afford a bullet payment for that. And therefore, I think one of our most innovative partnerships that we launched with Safaricom last year was around, 2 years ago, was what you've probably come across as lipa mdogo mdogo. But how do we ensure that somebody who has some consistent revenue, is earning some consistent money, can be able to go into a shop, be able to pick up a phone, pay a deposit of 500 shillings, and every day pay 20 shillings to be able to access that device? And you'll agree with me, if we're talking about increasing the tax base, if we're talking about increasing tax collections, access to the internet is one of the easiest ways of doing that, because access to information then allows us to grow our businesses and therefore be able to give more back to government. So there are two different things, and I'll give you a couple of other statistics. So there's the woman who we are talking about, who needs to access the internet to be able to grow her business and to be able to access a lot of the tools that are being developed by tax administrators. KRA has fantastic tools. iTax is, and congratulations on iTax. I remember the days I used to go to Sarit Center to drop off my tax forms every year, and they're stamped and you hope they reach. Somehow they always reached as part of a very big box of forms that were, that were deposited there. But it has transformed how we are able to interact and how we are able to deliver and remain compliant as citizens. Another thing, when we talk about modernizing citizen engagement, so we have iTax, we have the convergence of e-citizen, the 222. Maybe a little bit more work needs to be done around the PR of the platform, but it's an amazingly powerful tool that has been developed. And I'll talk a little bit later about that when we're talking about being data-driven. But when it comes to citizen engagement, some of the things we do or have been helping governments across the world is how do we leverage AI for call centers? I saw in Madam Mary's presentation in terms of digitization, we're doing very, very well in quite a number of things. Call center digitization was only 57%. And I would be curious to find out what that digitization actually means. Being able to leverage artificial intelligence is transforming how we communicate with our customers. An interesting touch point around that is around, for example, women traditionally go looking for information. And I'll call it being shy. We have less women calling call centers to ask a specific question, because a lot of the time they do not know what question to ask or what the challenge is. And we are finding that call center AI that enables a person to have a conversation online with a call center is solving for a lot of that. A lot of men are confident. They'll call and they'll say, this thing is not working. And they'll be asked a few questions, it's still not working. And etc. But very few women or women tend to shy away from a lot of these conversations. And we're finding the adoption of tools that allow citizens to engage and ask questions in long form and say, okay, fine, that's not what I wanted. I wanted more information on this particular thing. And allowing the AI chat box to then go back and get more information and ask them, is this what you're looking for? And that's how the interaction works. This is growth and shifting from just having a bot where you have to ask the right question and it auto-generates from a frequently asked questions thing. So modernizing citizen engagement, there's lots of opportunity. The first touch point with our citizens on their queries and questions around taxation. I mentioned digitally driven or data-driven spaces. There's a lot of innovation around this. Data interoperability and use of BigQuery to handle data is transformational for any tax administration. When I talked earlier on, or I mentioned earlier on about 222, the first time that was launched, I marveled at the amount of data that will then become available at the hands or at the fingertips of anybody who wants to provide a service to any citizen, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, and definitely in the tax space. So being able to share data, right? With technology, seamless collaboration and data sharing between different government agencies, can help identify discrepancies, uncover tax evasion schemes. So combining data from country government, the national government, from county governments, ministries, state corporations, financial institutions, and other relevant agencies provides a more holistic view of each of the citizens. So there's a massive opportunity to partner with technology organizations to figure out how do we leverage all the data that we have to be able to present a holistic view of an individual or a business, their financial activities, enabling your work to be so much easier in terms of better enforcement and risk assessment. Yeah. So this collaboration and smart use of AI-driven technology and data analytics on cloud can help streamline tax compliance, reduce fraudulent activities, and increase the tax base over time. Data is key. To have data, and most organizations, we still have a lot of siloed data all over the place, but to be able to pull together all the different data points that are available, then create quite a seamless opportunity for any tax administration there is out there. And of course, this has to be driven by trust. Yeah, trust in technology is called security. Providing and ensuring that as you collect data on me, on all the different parts of my life, whether it's from Ministry of Lands, whether it's from MOH, even from my financial institution, you keep it safe and ensure that you have the highest security settings. Now, we've talked about the woman citizen and why it is so important for her to have access to the internet, and why then having access to the internet will increase. And I think Madam Mary had a slide there, one bullet that I loved there. Women have higher tax compliance than men do. Giving them access to the internet and allowing them to find the information they need to be able to drive growth in their businesses and be able to be tax compliant is a game changer. But let's talk about the women on this call. I remember, in the intro I worked at Deloitte. I started my career off at Deloitte. My degree was in economics. I joined Deloitte Consulting. And at that time, all the different, the whole partnership was male. Indeed, a lot of the big four companies around Nairobi had significant male representations at the partnership level and senior management level. Today, a lot of that has shifted. We see women leading a lot of these institutions here. And indeed, there's been a gender shift in how many accountants and then specialists, including tax advisors, we have in Kenya who are women. Now, what is interesting is when I graduated from university, Google did not exist as a company at all. There's nothing I could have done in college to prepare me for this role that I have right now. A lot of the careers that exist in a lot of the technology companies did not exist at the time when we were going to school and studying. And yes, we have a lot of technology experts, and I have a lot of respect for them. But when you think about it, today, if you go to the university, for example, only about 30% of people pursuing a computer science degree are women. And as they come into the workforce, that tapers off. However, that does not stop us from understanding technology outcomes, which is very different from sitting down to code. If you can actually sit down and code, congratulations, please continue with that journey. But it is imperative that every single one of us understands the outcomes technology can present. More important than ever before, continuous learning and continuous education is important. And continuous education, I'll throw you another data point. Google with Accenture did a report where we studied the digital landscapes of countries across the world, and we came up with 5 countries that we call digital sprinters. Included there is Kenya. We also spent some time looking at all the developers across Africa, and we found that only 32% of software engineers across Africa are university taught. The rest are self-taught. University of YouTube, watching videos, etc. So I'm not saying go now and become a software engineer. You can, but I'm not saying go and do that. There's a wonderful, wonderful space called tax technology. Tax technology right now is a hot space for tax practitioners. And a lot of it is self-taught. Just understanding what is AI, what is machine learning, what is data analytics, what is it supposed what outcomes is it supposed to present? And a lot of companies, multinationals across the world, are embracing all these technologies. And you are the officers who are going to walk into those companies to look for compliance. You must know and you must understand what those things are. It's very important. So spend some time educating yourself about technology and how technology is transforming the organizations you're interacting with. Whether you are an accountant or a tax practitioner in an organization, or if you work in tax administration, or regardless of what space you're in, the world is changing, and it's changing fast. It's up to every single one of us to actually keep up with what is new. You don't have to be able to build AI yourself, but you need to be able to understand how to harness it and unleash it within your organization for it to make sense. I can continue talking for a long time if allowed to. Sheila, how much time did you want me to take?
You have about 7 minutes.
Okay, wonderful. So, I mean, I've talked about the citizens, our customers, the people whose businesses we want to grow. Actually, the people whose businesses we want visibility of, we want to grow, and we want them to either continue complying or start complying with tax. We've talked about the women who work in these spaces. And I think the technology itself, Madam Mary talked about digitizing and some of the studies that they're doing. And if anybody wants to talk to me more about that, we can sign an NDA and I'll be able to tell you where we've worked with different organizations to be able to transform them in this area. But I'll just double down on the fact that by employing advanced data analytics and artificial intelligence, algorithms, revenue authorities can gain valuable insights into taxpayer behavior, identify high-risk areas, and implement targeted enforcement strategies. These include risk profiling, targeted audits, predictive modeling, taxpayer segmentation, risk analysis. These technologies would enable every single revenue authority to detect patterns in recovery, undeclared assets, evasion, and really close loopholes. a lot of the AI that is also available would actually be able to then guide in some of the policy changes that need to take place for a lot of these loopholes to be closed. So with technology and seamless collaboration, as I said, with all the different government agencies, we can actually build a collaborative and really smart ecosystem where every single person, we have a full and complete picture of them and where they interact. Amazingly, while a lot of women don't have smartphones, a lot of them, or more than the last 10 years, are financially included today. So points of intersection or points or data points on who they are, where they are, and what they are doing is actually there. The data points are there, but it would require a lot of data sharing. As I said, 222 provides an amazing opportunity for data sharing, but also do other collaborations across governments, across financial institutions, and to ensure that we ultimately increase the task base. So at this point, Sheila, I'll stop talking in case anybody has any questions on how to build out their careers to become more tech savvy, or how the organizations can shift and be able to absorb the new technologies and be able to leverage them for growth. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Madam Agnes, for your insights as well. Indeed, Warren Buffett, a famous American business man, investor, and philanthropist, said that indeed digital transformation is the way to go. And if businesses need to grow and move, then they need to adopt technology. So thank you for sharing your insights. We take note of also the challenge that you pose to us as women in our spaces of work to embrace technology. You've posed challenges to the revenue authorities, including KRA, to embrace technology in their decision-making, in their policy changes, and also to build collaborative and supportive ecosystem with fintech and technological companies as Google. And indeed, Google is doing a wonderful job in supporting and transforming businesses through the various solutions that you offer. So we'll be engaging with you a little later. At this juncture, I would like to invite our third panel speaker, Madam Esther Wahome. She is the Deputy Commissioner, Policy and Tax Advisory at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Prior to her appointment, she served as the Chief Manager, Tax Dispute Division, in charge of facilitating and moderating dispute resolution. Ms. Wahome is a seasoned and grounded tax professional with over 15 years of experience. Before joining KRA, she served as a senior manager at Deloitte & Touche, where she had the overall responsibility of transaction advisory and tax compliance for clients in the financial services and government, as well as the agriculture sector. During her time at Deloitte, she coordinated tax restructuring, mergers and acquisitions projects across several jurisdictions and managed transfer pricing, international tax, and corporate tax assignments. Ms. Wahome is a certified public accountant of Kenya and a certified professional mediator. She holds a Bachelor's of Commerce from the University of Nairobi. Madam Wahome, we want to hear your perspective on what KRA is doing to enhance digital compliance and women inclusivity in decision and actions taken by Kenya Revenue Authority. The floor is yours. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and Commissioner CSS, and the speakers who've gone before me. I think they are very insightful in terms of the ideas that these people have given. And I think the tax and gender conversation is a very important conversation for the Revenue Authority. And as Kenya Revenue Authority is something that we are very keen on in terms of understanding gender and tax policy, by first appreciating that there could be explicit and implicit gender biases, and then trying to, of course, eliminate the explicit gender biases. I want to say that up to the very recent past, we actually had one of the provisions that allowed men to file returns on behalf of women, which we have deliberately deleted from our laws. And it was a clear indication of an explicit gender bias. So the conversation of gender is a very critical conversation, even at policy level. And I like the statistics that Mary has given in her analysis on how women are disadvantaged, both from an internet access perspective, from an employment perspective, but more importantly, and what was really striking in that conversation is the lack of gender disaggregated data. And I think this is one of the places, and it's a challenge that I hear from the previous presenters. It's a challenge we need to take as the Revenue Authority on how can we be able to obtain gender disaggregated data that will then help us in making various policy decisions. Again, the other key issue that I've had, again, Mary talk about is the issue of the informal sector. And I think this is a very important conversation that we need to engage in, not just now, but in future, because the taxation of the informal sector is not only a challenge from a gender perspective, but I think it's a general challenge, especially in the developing economies. And I think once we really appreciate some of these challenges that the informal sector is experiencing, and I think, Mary, you've really highlighted some of these challenges, then we can be able to come up with strategies that can be able to deal with this specific sector, noting that then women have a very high contribution in this sector. I think Mary talked about around 80% of the informal sector being women, and I think that's a very important statistic. So if we are able to address the various challenges that then the informal sector faces, then I believe we'll have been able to reach out to most of the women in this particular sector. So I think as a tax administration, then we have embarked on a journey of being able to appreciate the challenges, not just the informal sector faces, but the challenges that are faced generally by the country in terms of complexity of tax administration processes. And we appreciate that some of these processes could be complex for people, as the previous presenters have said, for people who potentially don't even have access to internet, because access to internet is a critical source of information. So the complexity of tax administration processes then requires very critical review, so that then we are able to evaluate how do we simplify our processes, how do we formulate strategies or policy solution to support especially the informal sector. So the journey that we've undertaken, and I'm sure most of us will appreciate, is we've gotten into a lot of simplification processes in terms of registration, filing, payment. And I liked the previous presenter, Agnes, saying that the 222 is really appreciated by the taxpayers, just because of the way it's simple to make payment for purposes of tax. Then I think in the informal sector, we also need to look at how do we drive voluntary compliance. And I think this is a very key issue for the Revenue Authority, because as we are now with our capacity, of course, we may not be able to go to every home, to go to every company that is operating out there. But how then can we be able to drive voluntary compliance by improving the tax morale? And I think the tax morale is a conversation that would then require, collaborative approach, a whole of government approach, so that then that voluntary compliance is driven from a whole of government approach. Then, of course, how do we make our tax regime affordable and simple? And I think these are some of the conversations that we've been having as the Revenue Authority in terms of trying to see what is still the gap and how can we be able to address some of these challenges. again, when you look at the challenge that we have in terms of taxation and the women empowerment and the fact that women also are lagging behind in terms of literacy, I feel like the challenge presented to us again by the previous presenters is how do we have targeted tax education initiatives for the informal sector and more so for the women, so that then we can be able to improve their literacy levels. And I feel that that's the challenge I am taking from the presentations. Can we have tailor-made education initiatives specific for women and being able to drive tax compliance among women? I like the statement that women are more they are more willing to be compliant than men. So I think this is a window we have as the Revenue Authority to then be able to tap into it and educate our women to be able to then comply. Then a key point there about collaborations. What collaborations do we have? And is this a challenge that we can take as a Revenue Authority to collaborate with the right people, the civil society organization, the team that focuses on women? How can we collaborate to be able to then drive tax compliance and also to be able to educate women in this particular sector? Again, the issue of public participation. We have noted in the past that most of the time, I think as revenue authorities, and this is not just an issue for Kenya, is that we sit back and develop solutions that are inward looking. You're looking at how the revenue authority can then be able to collect taxes. But the challenge we've given ourselves, and it's again a journey we are walking, is how can we develop solutions that are outward looking, where we engage with the relevant stakeholders that are critical to, the expansion of the tax base, and ask them, what do you want us to do differently? And I believe this conversation we've started here, it's a very important conversation, because then we are trying to see what is the feedback we can get from our various stakeholders to be able to develop solutions that, are more appropriate or can be used in an easier manner by our taxpayers. Because most of the times when you develop a solution internally without then focusing on our key stakeholders, then when you put it out there, the usage of it becomes difficult. So those are some of the key challenges I'm hearing from the various presenters. And I think they're very critical in terms of us being able to sit and evaluate what we can do differently. Having said that, I think that the Kenya Revenue Authority has in the recent past or in the past made very significant strides in terms of simplifying compliance in the wake of the digital era. And I liked again, Mary started or highlighted some of the key pillars in tax compliance, which includes registration, filing, payment, reporting. And these are some of the very critical pillars that if we are to focus on improving tax compliance, we need to look at how do we simplify registration, how do we simplify payment, how do we simplify filing, and how do we simplify reporting. And this reporting would actually help us significantly, as Madam Agnes has said, in terms of data analytics and how do we then rely on data to be able to even drive compliance, drive our audit processes, drive our enforcement strategies. So KRA has walked quite a journey in regard to simplification through digital solutions. We started, of course, with iTax, and I liked, even me, I went through that, Agnes, running to Sarit Center to file my return. And I think, as you've seen my background, I also used to work in Deloitte. So we would actually run to Sarit Center to drop our tax returns. But you can see now with iTax, people are able to actually file their returns at the comfort of their homes. You don't have to always run on Friday to file a return. Well, maybe Friday is a 28th and the return is due on a 30th. You can actually file on 30th midnight. I'm not saying that's what we are trying to encourage in this forum, but what we are saying is what technology has helped us achieve, that you don't have to sort of look at a working day, but you can actually look at the convenience of your home and being able to actually file your return, make remittance of your tax payments, and you can actually be able to do that using the technology that we have provided, that is iTax. In addition to that, of course, we have mobile services. And I think mobile services is a very big breakthrough for the Revenue Authority, because recognizing that not all our taxpayers again have internet access. And I think the issue of internet access has been highlighted very well. And we are having 37% women are less likely to access internet. So when you have the M service or the mobile service where you can be able to pay taxes or register, then this has gone a long way in this issue of facilitating not just the women, but also the population at large. Then, of course, in the era of the digital economy and digital conversation, we've also have introduced the payment of digital taxes through simplified registration framework. And this has gone a long way in enabling our non-resident taxpayers be able to file and make payment of VAT and digital tax electronically. And I think in the wake of the complication that we have in the taxation of digital economy, we feel that this is a huge milestone that the Revenue Authority has made. Then, of course, the current conversation of teams and e-teams and e-invoicing and being able to get real-time or near real-time data through e-invoicing. This has been a very huge breakthrough for the Revenue Authority, because visibility of transaction is very critical for the revenue administrator, because it's the only way we can be able to tell what is the revenue that the citizens are making, and what are some of these revenues that then are subject to taxation, what are the gaps in terms of collecting this revenue. So teams and e-teams is a very critical tool for us, and I'll be talking a little bit more about the e-team solution. Then, of course, the issue of integration, and I think the previous speakers have highlighted integration with the relevant stakeholders, the government, that is NHIF, NSSF, IFMIS, and any other relevant authorities, is very critical for us as a revenue administration, because if we're able to consolidate and collaborate the entire of this data into our systems, then of course, as Agnes has said, this will really help us in being able to make the right decisions, make the right assessments, probably make the right enforcement, and of course, be able to expand our tax net, because there has been a lot of complaints that taxation is always on the same people. The person with an employment income is being hit. The person who is probably filing is being hit with additional taxes. So with these integrations, I believe will give us a very good opportunity to be able to expand our tax net. Of course, in the recent past, we also had integration with the taxpayers' tax system, and we've seen a huge growth in this respect on excise duty and remittance of taxes on a 24-hour basis has been very key for us, because the question we keep asking ourselves is, if you are able to collect that tax on a daily basis, why then not remit it to the Revenue Authority? Because the question is, the government goes into borrowing to finance their activities, awaiting the 20th or the 30th of the month to be able to receive the taxation. So where possible and where practically possible, then can we be able to have platforms that will enable us get a 24-hour remittance of taxes? And I think the conversation on use of data analytics is a very critical conversation, because use of data analytics is the only way that we'll be able to analyze large volumes of data to be able to make the right decisions. And these decisions will empower our compliance, will empower our audit. Our audit, as it is now, is no longer, it's currently actually being driven through risk profiling broadly, because we want to analyze the data and ask ourselves, where is the risk? Then where there is risk, then you focus on the risk as a priority, even as you do your compliance checks. Now, the conversation again on e-invoicing is a very important conversation for KRA, as I had said. And I really needed to elaborate on the journey that we have walked for KRA on the e-invoicing, because we started e-invoicing from a VAT perspective, where then VAT registered taxpayers are required to to pay VAT and to transmit invoices through invoicing. But over time, what we have seen is that this is a very critical tool to create visibility, not just for VAT, but also for purposes of income tax. So the rollout of e-teams and e-invoicing to all taxpayers, of course, I know some of our taxpayers, especially in the informal sector, may not have taken it very well. We've received a lot of feedback from these taxpayers. But what we are doing, again, as an outward-looking revenue administration, is to look at what are these issues that these taxpayers are raising. If they are saying, for example, we do not have access to internet, can we develop solutions that will then be able to help these taxpayers without necessarily internet access? And I must say that our technology team has actually done a lot of work in this regard to make sure that, this journey is accommodative of every taxpayer, and we can be able to actually develop solutions that will fit every taxpayer. And I think as a team in this forum, it's good we appreciate that e-invoicing is not a punishment to taxpayers. And I think in the wake of visibility and use of data, you'll appreciate that the challenge by the revenue administration is that most of the times you will only have data visibility from the people who've decided to be formal or more of the formalized sector. But this formalized sector will always be dealing with the informal sector. Now, the e-teams technology is supposed to enhance self-compliance, or rather you're pushing compliance through the taxpayers, where then the person in the informal sector will be able to drive e-teams compliance if they are dealing with someone in the informal sector. And I think if we're able to embrace this technology as a whole as taxpayers, it is a technology that will really come in handy in expanding the tax net. And I must say that the benefit for this is benefit to all, because when you're able to collect tax from a bigger population, then of course you can be able to reduce the burden from the few taxpayers. So the e-teams solution then has also brought in the issue of simplification in terms of filing of tax returns. And I think this is very critical for the informal sector and also for the women at large, because if we are able to auto-populate a tax return for taxpayers, then it goes a long way in simplifying compliance for this taxpayer. And I think we started a journey with the employment return, and you can bear me witness as it is now. If you are employed, then you don't need to do a lot of, there's nothing much required of you when you're filing your employment return. It is very simple. The data is already auto-populated, and actually what you'll need to fill is just 1 or 2 or 3 tabs, and then you're able to file your income tax return. So if we are able to all move into the e-teams system, then it means we can actually be able to simplify the filing system, not just for VAT registered taxpayers, but also for other taxpayers as a whole. Then, of course, the standardization when it comes to invoicing is very important for the revenue administration. And I think this is what the e-teams system is aimed to achieve. So if we're able to then simplify our tax system, I believe as a whole will not only be helping the women, but also will be helping the Kenyan as a whole, and more specifically the informal sector. And I think the lack of gender disaggregated data may actually limit us in terms of being able to identify very tax-specific solutions that then we can be able to offer to women as a whole. But having been given this challenge, I think it's something we will take so that then we are able to identify what are the very specific tax incentives that you can be able to give to women. What we have noted, though, in the past is that some of these incentives that are provided, like, for example, the exemption of sanitary towels, which is really focused on the women. The question is that does this benefit reach the right person it's supposed to reach? Do we need to reevaluate this and say this is the need that we have based on this data that we have obtained, and how can we use that data then to come up with a specific incentive or benefit that would benefit women as a whole, or that is gender sensitive. So I feel like that is a challenge from a policy perspective, something that we need to evaluate as we look at our policy and see if we are able to get this gender disaggregated data, then it can be able to help us in terms of being able to reach a wider population. Again, when it comes to making the e-invoicing a bit more friendly, the KRA has, of course, appreciated, and I like Madam Mary's presentation, that the poverty levels in women are more increased. So probably access to certain gadgets would be a problem. The literacy levels, the internet access. When it comes to women, you are a bit more disadvantaged, and I think that is backed up by the data you've presented. So what are we doing as KRA to be able to then simplify the e-invoicing, having identified it as a critical solution for us? What have we done to be able to then simplify the e-invoicing solution? So we've come up with a number of e-invoicing solutions, and I must say that this has been informed by the feedback that we have received from the stakeholders. So we started from just having the e-teams, or rather the teams, which was a gadget-based. We received a lot of feedback on how expensive this gadget was, and we quickly moved on to come up with a system solution, which is e-teams. And then this solution now, we are over time also improving it to make sure that it is not only for people who have internet access, but we develop solutions that are even USSD driven, e-citizen, and we've even come up with, we are still trying to develop a solution that would fit even the farmer, because I think we've in the past we've received a lot of complaints, especially from the farmers who are asking us, how are you? We don't even know what this e-teams solution is about. So how are we supposed to do e-teams if we don't even understand what taxation is? So just trying to evolve and develop solutions that fit each of these categories of our taxpayers has been our journey. And I must say that if we are able to achieve this in terms of having this visibility through e-invoicing, I think it will give us a very big it will be a very big step for us as the Revenue Administration to be able to expand our tax net and also to be able to simplify compliance, not just for women, but of course for the population at large. So in addition to, of course, being able to simplify this, we have come up with very clear step-by-step guides in our system that will then be able to be useful for this category of taxpayers. We are collaborating with various stakeholders. We of course have our revenue service assistants on the grounds who are doing door-to-door trying to support. And I think this will also help, and we are encouraging taxpayers to make use of this, not to look at it as people who are trying to come and collect tax, but also people who are coming to facilitate taxpayers to be compliant. And these are people who can actually be very useful in responding to various questions by taxpayers. We cannot belabor on the issue of education and training programs. And I think this is one area that the Revenue Administration is placing a lot of importance on, because we know we need tax education for our taxpayers. How can we simplify tax education materials? What can we do differently so that then each of our taxpayers is very well versed with the various solutions that we are coming with? So the issue of the digital conversation and the tax policy and gender is then a very important conversation, not just even for the informal sector, but as a whole, because the taxation of the digital economy in itself has brought a lot of complication to the Revenue Administration. But in addition to that, if we are able to have a technological or a technology-driven compliance, I think it will not only simplify work for the Revenue Administration, but it will also simplify for the taxpayers. And I think in closing, I would want to say that we need to start a journey as a Revenue Administration on making sure that We are gender sensitive when it comes to tax policy, and we can only do that by getting gender disaggregated data so that we can be able to come up with incentives, as our presenter Mary has said. What are the incentives? What are the education strategies? What are the training strategies? What are the kind of collaborations we can come up with? And I think this will really go a long way in enabling us simplify compliance. So Sheila, I think I would want to close it there.
Thank you, Madam DC, Deputy Commissioner, for painting an inward perspective of what KRA is doing as a revenue authority. And indeed, you have highlighted quite a number of impressive strides that KRA has made in the past in embracing technology. You have highlighted a number, including simplification of registration processes, filing, payment of taxes, embracing technology in simplifying solutions, including e-teams, and quite a number of things that KRA is doing. But of course, you pose a challenge to yourself and to KRA as a whole in areas of tax education, particularly focusing on women, strategies for tax education, policy and gender matters to look into. So we'll be engaging you further in the question and session. And at this juncture, I would like to invite all participants on call. I know you are not able to unmute, but you have the question and answer function. You're able to post your question. Please go ahead and post your questions to our keynote speaker, our panelists. You are able to use your raise hand icon emoji. Please use that to send through your questions. At this point, I also like to inform you that KRA, this conversation is live on KRA Digital Assets. We are live on Facebook. We are also live on X. We are live on YouTube, and we are also live on KRA TV. Happy to have a KRA TV channel to reach to our taxpayers and for purposes of tax education. And maybe if I could just pose a question to our keynote speaker, Madam Mary, as we wait for the other questions or hands raised, comments. Madam Mary, yes, I can see you. Maybe to pose a question, you shared with us some statistics evident that women are behind in terms of digital literacy, matters to do with tax payment. And from where you sit, maybe you could give us insights. What can organizations or leaders, women leaders do to help navigate and possibly propagate legislation changes in law so that women can be accommodated, embrace technology more? I don't know whether from the Africa Tax Agency, where you have a practical example of legislation framework that have been, passed, very deliberate, championing matters of tax, gender, and women inclusivity.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And I was seeing a strange message on my computer. Thank you. I was, in terms of responding to your question, I think while I may not have the data of exactly where that has worked, I'll give an example of countries, some of the countries that have intentionally and consciously come up with a system where they gather data that that shows the role of women and how women are going about the different areas of life, and this then informs the decision-making process. And I'll use my own country, Rwanda, where the majority of parliamentarians are women. I think it's about over 60%. And what happens here is that a lot of what is going on, like the elements that we've been discussing, and I was really keenly listening to both speakers. I was really excited to hear what is happening in the private sector, but also what is happening in the, at KRA. And the more these issues are identified, then the more solutions will be made that are really fit for use for the women. So, meaning that if we get proper data on how, these women are struggling, then governments will be able to come up with solutions. And again, I think in Rwanda, there's a deliberate project to get as many people cell phones as possible, because this is changing lives. Like the previous speaker said, if you look at some of the stats and how women have been able to use, not just women, how we all use the cell phone basically to run our lives, then you will understand that the more they are connected, the more they will improve their businesses. And I really liked, that point coming through. I'll give you an example, though, about the use, just to put more perspective of the call center and how that is changing things. One of the EITAF programs is in Madagascar. And this is the technical support. And in Madagascar, they wanted support for a call center. And we all thought that, a call center. And we then realized in the process that the modern call center, and I'm using this also to respond to a question that was, I think, raised by one of the speakers. I think it was Agnes, about the call center and the fact that it's only at 57%. And we realized that actually the modern call center is not one that just responds to questions. It's used as a tool to carry out tax education. And so I think these are some of the solutions, having analyzed that people were really struggling in terms of meeting their obligations. They put up a call center. So those are some of the things that we can look at in terms of policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clearly, there is an opportunity for Kenya to take advantage of the legislation framework and see what can be done in that space. And just speaking from where you left, Madam Mary, I would like to ask Agnes, in as far as fintech and technology is concerned, the intersection affecting is particularly women in marginalized areas, what do you foresee as risks involved in their inclusion, particularly considering their level of literacy, in adoption of technology, the risk involved in privacy, data sharing, sharing the information, yet they are not at the level where they understand the risks involved with the use of technology?
Thanks for that very, very important question. Security and risks that come with securing data needs to be moved slightly higher than the individual consumer. The responsibility of that needs to go much higher to the organization that is collecting the data, and indeed even at some point at a central government level. And I'll give you an example. This one's public, so I can share it. So Google has been working with the government of Israel to actually create what's called a cyber shield, a shield that covers all the country's data from external as well as internal people looking to, or organizations trying to access data that they really shouldn't have access to. That then ensures that every citizen, when they're using, whether it's a KRA portal, whether they're giving their information to eCitizen, or whether they're giving you their information, it's in an environment that is not only secure, but is also trustworthy. Inside, as I mentioned before, in digital anything, the word trust is the cybersecurity environment in which we build our platforms. So to the largest extent possible, the woman who doesn't have too much education wants to access the internet, wants to leverage it to grow, whether it's her family, her business, or herself, needs to be able to access it, knowing that it is already safe. The responsibility for data integrity, the responsibility needs to move a little bit higher than herself. So we find a lot of cases where there are phishing incidences, where even things like just being conned. How many times are people conned? They are called, they are told, oh, we are from your bank, we are trying to do, and then they give all their information away. So building systems that are secure and that citizens trust, because perception is 99% of that trust. And secondly, really communicating on how and how not to. And I've seen a lot of organizations spend a lot of time communicating on, don't share your PIN, don't take calls from people you don't know, never give out your personal information or any sort of details to anybody who you don't trust or who you have not contacted in the first instance around that. So the responsibility of securing the nation is 100% vested on the organizations that are collecting this data, as well as hopefully even at a central government level, where we are able to build out cyber shields and integrity shields. One of the things I would say, so for example, eCitizen in the last, I think, year has just been mind-boggling in terms of the number of additional services they've been able to put in there. And we're all enjoying them, thankfully. No more running to the Huduma Center and other places, even though that infrastructure is still important. The same way in our estates where we live, in the evening, there are always policemen on patrol, carrying guns, where the nearest police station is, is the same way on the digital superhighway that we must secure it. The same way we have an army for, external, to safeguard the country against external aggression. And we have an administration police and other forms of police internally to take care of all of us internally, is the same level of investment that must go in to securing the digital superhighways as we all shift our lives onto those superhighways.
Great insights. Thank you very much, Agnes. I do agree with some of the sentiments that you have shared. A lot needs to happen around security, and as organizations seeking to get exchange data or to seek to get data, then the responsibility heavily lies on us to undertake that and ensure that our citizens, much as they share the information, then the information is safe and secure with us. And to Madam Esther, you spoke about collaborative, deliberate, approach with civil society, government agencies. I don't know from where you sit, whether you feel we are receiving that support from, government entities, from our stakeholders, our partners, and what's your view? A lot needs to be done indeed, but what's your take so far? Is the support been there, or do we need to push for more or ask for more?
Thank you, Sheila. I think the voice from the top, even State House, has been very clear that our president is actually committed and ready to do anything that will then support the tax administration in revenue collection. And I think they have been the key pioneers in some of these technological solutions that we are coming up with, and the key support. And you remember like integration, for example, with the betting and gaming companies. The support by the government was very critical for us to then be able to get this collaboration. But I must say, Sheila, I think sometimes we fear asking. That's my experience so far. We fear asking. But what I've experienced in the recent past on the project of trying to expand the tax base, especially in the informal sector, is that most of these stakeholders are actually willing to sit with us and understand our challenges and work with us to improve the processes. Because if you look at taxation, Sheila, none of us wants to always get an incremental in terms of taxation. Last year alone, the employees got a 1.5% housing levy. Then you get your tax rate going up to that 2.5, 35%. I don't think any of us really in this organization want that trend to continue. So this collaboration, actually, we have seen that most of these people are actually even coming forward to ask us, how can we work together to expand the tax net? So we have worked with quite a number of organizations in making sure that we get the right collaboration. But I like one point that was raised there on one of the key concerns that we have received, even as we try to integrate and collaborate, is on the issue of, do we have secure system? Even if we collaborate with you, is our data safe? You know, are we sure that you're actually not going to, the data integrity generally, are we going to achieve that data integrity? And I can tell you that that has been a huge emphasis for the Revenue Authority. And we have very strict penalties when it comes to confidentiality. And so in dealing with the issue of, are our systems capable? Are we able to then communicate to our citizens on what are we doing with this data? I think in that line, maybe we may need to work a bit more in sending the right messages on how their data is secure, on the restrictions in the usage of data, so that then some of these stakeholders can be able to still gain a lot more confidence in the Revenue Authority's capability to keep the data secure. So in terms of collaboration, most, if not all, stakeholders are willing to collaborate with us, including the IT companies, you know, the government entities, private sector. But we need to probably, as an improvement area, enhance on our level of communication on what safeguards have we put in place to be able to make sure that their data is safe and it will not be misused, and there is data integrity in our system, and our systems are capable of course, being able to handle that data. So those are some of the feedbacks we are receiving, and we are working very hard to make sure that we deal with some of those issues, so that then this collaboration is not hampered by that particular challenge.
Thank you very much, Madam Esther, for also giving us that insight. We are happy to hear that indeed our stakeholders are keen to supporting KRA undertakings and programs and initiatives. However, we also take recognition that a lot needs to be done in that space to ensure that our systems are secure, our integrity as far as data is concerned is enhanced, and that their information then is not misused. I see that we have 5 minutes to our closure time. I see that we have comments and questions from the Q&A session. If I could read out the first one from Nicole Kosgei. Looks like it's a comment, not a question. I think as women in tax administration, we should advocate for equity among women. Women pay much taxes compared to men. If we look at the household tax, it's mostly women who bear the burden. Last year during the ATIW meeting, we discussed tax being equal. Women are ready to go digital and be compliant, declaring taxes correctly and paying on time. I think this is a sentiment that has been shared by our speakers, that indeed women are more or easily more to become more compliant compared to men. That was not a question, but a compliment or an observation. Catherine Ireri, you're saying what actions have you taken in including women with visual challenges to independently file their tax return? That is for you, Madam Esther. I appreciate this interaction session on tech with the emerging growth of fintech in the country and cross-border? How will the authority put up speed in terms of tax collection and declaration of income gained by this tax category? Again, that's a question for you, Madam Esther Wahome. Those two, I think you could address those two. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, for the questions. I think the one on the visually impaired taxpayers, I think that's a challenge we are going to take. The way our returns are currently structured for the visually impaired, you definitely have to get someone to assist you file the returns in the system. So I think this is a very good question, and it's a challenge we will take to see how then can we be able to enhance our tax filing to accommodate this category of taxpayers. However, I would want to highlight here that for taxpayers who are persons with disability, I think KRA and the government as at large has come up with very good incentives for this category of taxpayers, including exemptions. And we actually process a lot of exemptions for the visually impaired taxpayers, and therefore that's a window that the taxpayer may need to exploit, so that then you take advantage of the various exemptions that are in place. So this category of taxpayers is a category that we are very keen to make sure that they are facilitated in terms of filing. And if you are to actually even walk into any KRA office, we believe that the KRA officers would easily be able to facilitate you to file. But I take it as a challenge, Sheila, on what solution can we then develop for visually impaired taxpayers to then be able to file independently. And I agree, some of these details are very confidential to someone in terms of the revenue you make. So it's a good challenge, and I'll take it and probably see how we can come up with the relevant solutions. Now, of course, in the tech industry, the cross-border trade, I think KRA has over time come up with very many solutions to deal with the cross-border trade. And I think this is one, we actually have an office, international tax office, that specifically deals with international taxation, and more specifically focusing on cross-border trade, from transfer pricing to taxation of the digital assets. And I believe in the recent past, you noted there were changes in law on taxation of the digital assets. But more importantly, when it comes to taxation of taxpayers who are deriving income from Kenya through the digital platforms, I think our law is very elaborate when it comes to regulations that we have put in place to then enable these taxpayers to pay. And actually, it's a very simplified registration framework that we have come up with to enable taxpayers not only pay VAT from their digital activities, but to also be able to file income tax from the digital trade. So I think KRA is trying to, of course, be in speed with the technology, but I also want to say here that the issue of the digital economy is not just a challenge for Kenya when it comes to visibility, but it's a global issue. And I think some of us who have read through the base erosion and profit shifting actions, one of the key actions is on how to deal with the digital taxation, because the digital taxation is not just a challenge for Kenya, but a challenge globally. So KRA in the recent past, of course, has shown a lot of interest into the discussions that are taking place when it comes to the taxation of digital economy by the OECD under the inclusive framework. And this is Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. And we are at very detailed conversation with the OECD on how then we can come in and be able to also participate in the taxation of the digital economy. So Sheila, KRA is not being left behind. We are doing our best to make sure that we are up to speed with the development in the technology.
Thank you very much, Madam Esther, again, for just highlighting key aspects around the issues that KRA are handling. Important to note that you have taken up the challenge on visually impaired taxpayers. We'll be looking forward to reporting progress, maybe in our fourth edition of this forum. But just to pose a final question, I see that we are 2 minutes slightly above our time. And the last question would go to our keynote speaker, Madam Mary. And Stella Wakoma is asking, what is your plan? This is ATAF, for bridging the gap on tax administration and compliance in Africa. What is your plan on bridging the gap on tax administration and compliance in Africa?
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila, and I want to thank Stella as well. Well, our plan as ATAF, our daily business is to improve compliance and build effective tax administrations in Africa. That's what ATAF is about. So what ATAF is trying to do in the face of digitization, for instance, and taxing the digital economy, the commissioner just mentioned the work, for instance, that they are doing at the OECD on the two-pillar solution. One of the things that ATAF is doing and what we continue to do is to respond to the technical assistance needs in the different countries with regard to tax administration and also to improve the compliance. One way of improving compliance is having laws that are user-friendly, that are clear. It's one way is making sure that we have tax men and women who service. But another way is also ensuring that we get taxing rights that enable the tax administrations and the countries to voice, to collect revenues that then facilitate development. So what we are doing as ATAF is a combination of all that. So we don't only do advocacy, but we also do practical support to tax administrations. And in the area of digitization specifically, we've been voicing the needs of Africa, the OECD, and we're now also joining the discussions at the United Nations. So I could go on and on about our technical assistance work. It is both demand-driven, but it is also supply-driven in areas where we have identified solutions that we then take to countries and say, if you use this, for instance, we are now talking about digitization, then it will help to improve your compliance. So yeah, that is my response for now.
Thank you very much, Madam Mary. And indeed, we can acknowledge and appreciate the support that we have been receiving, if I could speak for KRA, and just to appreciate that our teams indeed receive quite a lot from ATAF, and as well as KRA do support ATAF in return in matters of technical support and also supporting other sister revenue authorities. So thank you very much. I would like to bring this question and answer session to a close, so that we can bring our meeting to a beautiful end. But just before I close, just to appreciate wonderful ladies on this call. Thank you very much for gracing us with your time out of your busy schedules, for being here, for sharing insightful, thought-provoking insights on how we can enhance adoption of technology and, push the women agenda, inclusion, tax payment, processes, systems together, and also playing our part as women in our various spaces. We also do appreciate, of course, the contribution that has been made by men and continue to be done by our men. To give a vote of thanks will be the Commissioner for Customs and Border Control, Dr. Lillian Nyawanda. There you are, Commissioner. How are you?
I'm fine, Sheila. How are you?
Good to have you. Good to see. I'm good. I hope that you have listened in from the start of the discussions. Indeed, we've had a very deep conversations around digital matters, tax administration, insights about women, their levels of participation, the level of literacy, and how we can enhance this discourse to better include women in spaces where they need to participate more, including payment of taxes. So maybe your sentiments on these discussions, and then you'll go ahead and give your closing remarks.
Thank you, Sheila. I joined in from the start, from the beginning.
great.
It's been an amazing session.
Oh, wow.
Useful insights. I think the mind-boggling, the statistics that were presented by Mary, our chief guest, on the gender disparity and just the statistics on the revenue authorities. We have a lot to do. Hearing from Agnes, the role of technology, how we can harness data and leverage on that and use that, especially in revenue collection. There's a lot that I was able to pick from there. There's so much. Just even the opening remarks from Commissioner Nancy, very insightful. I must say it's been a very good session. Hearing from Deputy Commissioner Esther on what we are doing as a revenue authority. And I think there's a lot we can do as women in this nation and in this country and in this continent. Basically, we still have a lot to do, and I believe we are the ones to do it. So each and every person, the 700 and something number of ladies and gentlemen who've been in this session, I believe we picked insights, we picked lessons that we can then go out there and be, transformers, change agents. So thank you, Sheila. I will give my closing remarks. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Kenya Revenue Authority, it's been a pleasure to have you join us for this year's edition of the Women in Taxation Forum. I take this opportunity to sincerely thank our chief guest, the Director Tax Programs at the African Tax Administration Forum, Ms. Mary Bain, and our panelists for joining us today and sharing with us the experiences and insights in relation to digital transformation in taxation. I also want to appreciate the leadership and management of KRA led by our Commissioner General for the support not only during this forum, but also in ensuring that women have an equal opportunity for elevation to various leadership roles across the organization. We appreciate your commitment to progressive policies that have enabled us to deliver on our duties and also handle other responsibilities that come along with womanhood. My appreciation also goes to the team that has planned this forum. We appreciate the work that you put in to ensure this forum was a success. We say a big thank you to all participants and stakeholders who logged into the forum and participated in one way or another. We appreciate your feedback and look forward to further collaboration with you on taxation and other mutually beneficial engagements. To fellow women in taxation and tech spaces, I want to encourage you to be bold, innovative, and continue adapting as you pursue your greatest ambitions. Do not allow anything to hold you back. Your dreams and ambitions are achievable. Put in the work, and with time, you will realize immense success. Thank you all and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Back to you, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. Indeed, a lot of people were involved in this. We can't thank them enough for bringing forth this wonderful edition of Women in Tax Forum. It has been my pleasure as your hosts to drive this conversation. But just before we leave, I would like to request our speakers to have your videos on so that we can grab, I don't know whether to call it a digital, a screen grab for our memories and references. Dr. Nyawanda, we are waiting for you to have your video on. Thank you very much. Just a minute as we try and put all the speakers' video on one slide or one frame. Good. So our Commissioner, Nancy, stepped out to attend to another meeting, but we got that moment and we should be able to have her, Madam Agnes, with AI, we can do something and have our commissioner there. But thank you so much, ladies. It's been a wonderful morning. Thank you so much for the insights you have shared, the experiences, the challenge, particularly from Mary, Agnes, that you have posed on KRA. We look forward to incorporating this in our work plans, in our process, enhancing our processes to serve the citizens of this country better. Otherwise, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time having you here. To our audience, the 766. At some point, we were 890. Thank you very much for your time, for staying through this forum. We thank you, and may you all have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.